Welcome back to another episode of Create a New Tomorrow. I'm your host, Ari Gronich, and I have with me a very odd man. His name, Justin Recla. His commitment, the superpowers of others. We all have superpowers within us, and Justin's company, Superpower Experts, helps you find the superpower in you. So, I'm not going to talk a lot about Justin's background. I'm just going to suffice it to say that he and his wife met teaching in a 3-letter initial government agency. And his background in corporate counter fraud and espionage and things like that, he has a little bit of background in the mind of people. And so I'm going to let you, Justin, tell a little bit more about your background itself. And I'd like you to go back a ways to some of those earlier days of what your history is and what that allows you to do as one of your superpowers.
Wow, it was a while ago. Thanks for having me on the show, Ari. It's good to be here. Wow, where do we begin? I'll give you the short version because it does seem like multiple lifetimes ago that this all started. But my wife and I are both former counterintelligence agents with the U.S. government. We met teaching at the Army counterintelligence schoolhouse, and we probably put 4,000 or 5,000 agents through the training. Wrote a large portion of the curriculum there, and eventually led us into the business world. We met at CEO Space, and just a great group of people there. And we started our own corporate counterintelligence firm doing due diligence and vettings. And along the way, we found that people weren't necessarily just wanting to look into people. They were wanting to understand people. They were wanting to, more importantly, they were wanting to understand themselves. And lo and behold, we just happen to have a slew of history in that because the entire counterintelligence world is a giant chess game. It's the second oldest profession in the world. Spying, it is literally the second oldest profession. I'm not going to even get into the first, but it's been around a while, and we just happen to be in a position, in a role, and have the opportunity to serve our country in that position. And in that, being teachers of that, we learned a lot from what the Army taught us, from our own spiritual growth and personal development along the way. And our business kind of culminated into what is now Superpower Experts. See, because that's what people were asking for. They were wanting to know how do people work, right? I'll pay you to do it, but how do we do it for ourselves?
Right. So I want to get into that a little bit. You mentioned self-dominion, so I want you to talk a little bit about what that means. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you is, how difficult have you found it when you introduce yourself as somebody who has been who you've been, to make friends? And are they always wondering if you know the secrets and the truth, and have you vetted them? And what is that like to be? Everybody wants to be James Bond. I wanted to be James Bond. You were James Bond, kind of. At least part of that world. So, how does that work to feel like nobody's ever really trusting you, but they are, but they're not, but they are? And, and also then what is this self-dominion?
Absolutely. So, I love people. I absolutely love people. It's what motivates me to do the work that I do in the world. And yes, the background itself, the counterintelligence training, and I don't know if cursing's allowed on here, but I'm going to curse. Good. Because there's only one way to really describe this is yes, I love people. Yes, we've got friends. Most of our people and most of our friends know our backgrounds, right? We love and trust them. But on the average, at the end of the day, I've got to give a fuck about wanting to know what it is. And so those that are close to me, of course, we've got this tight relationship. But, if there's a potential client, and I've had this experience where I walk in the room and somebody goes, "Oh, you probably know all the dirty laundry about me." Nope, nobody paid me to look into you, so don't care. Right? It is kind of what it comes down to. And the way that plays into the self-dominion piece is that, I was 34 years old when I had my quote unquote awakening, right? When I realized that the world wasn't quite what I was led to believe. That was after going through the military, right? And being a part of the military still. That's when I met Tony, and it was when I met her, because she had already done a lot of journeying, her personal journeying at that point in time. And then when I met her, and being part of government counterintel and seeing some of the things that I saw and working with some of the people that I worked with, and things like Project Stargate, and things that are out there that you can look at that are like, whoa, that shit's real. It makes you, I would say it again,
or is it?
Yeah, or is it, right? It makes you start to question, everything. And in that journey, what I realized is that along the way, they're looking for dominion in their lives, right? Because the whole strive of why we go to work, why we go to 9 to 5, why we can have the altruistic motivations of I want to make the world a better place, right? Which is great. At the end of the day, it comes down to survival.
So let me ask you a question that came up from you saying this. And as you know, we have these echo chambers on the internet that really tend to affirm our own belief systems. And so I have this thought, like, if somebody were to step away from the news, from the media, from social media, and so on, sit in the corner basically with a mirror in front of them and ask themselves, what do I believe? And then break that apart into who told them how to believe that way, and why are they believing that way, and get into that really deep part of why do I believe what I believe in, then that might shift a lot of the reactionary things that we're seeing these days on there. But I'm not sure if somebody can have self-dominion and programs at the same time, right? Like, how does that work? Because you've been programmed, and you're constantly being programmed by everything around you. And then you say, oh, start having self-dominion. But to find every place and piece and parcel of what is not you is in and of itself a mastery of a lifetime, no?
It can be. It depends on how good at you are at detaching from what you perceive as being truth. And this is, if you haven't watched this, if your listeners haven't watched this, I highly recommend watching the movie The Social Dilemma on Netflix. They cover this. They had founding members, founding employees, founding executives from Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, all who self-admittedly show and show the behind the scenes that this was designed, and the reality that you're seeing is built off of an algorithm designed to keep you in a prison. Because you create up your barriers, you create up your walls. I like this. Awesome. You set your parameter. Guess where Facebook keeps you? In those parameters, right? We become what we consume, and Facebook and social platforms have learned that you feed more of that, it's like a drug. They even talk about it creating, it produces dopamine in the brain every time you get a like on your post, right? And it's intentional. And we have to, but how do you get to the self-dominion place? Yeah, it is a lifetime of mastery. But what we fool ourselves is that it's really not, because once you start pulling on the thread, if you keep pulling, it eventually comes unwound.
Yeah, so I get that. The algorithm that I'm thinking more about is the algorithm behind our eyeballs.
Oh, absolutely. That's what it comes down to, is you have to want that more.
Right, but how do you even know that that's something that you want more if the algorithm is saying this is so strongly connected to this is exactly this no matter what, right? So, for instance, I know you're a religious man and you go to church. I have friends who are very religious and go to church. Some of them believe that the Bible is the Word of God, word for word, right? There's nothing on the planet that you could say to them, logical or illogical, that will get them to not believe that that is the case. Just like for most vegans, there's nothing that you'll ever say to eat an animal, right? So that's the algorithm that I'm talking about. How do we shift those algorithms, because our perceptions of reality are so skewed based on those algorithms?
So the easiest answer I have for that is, one, there's no simple answer, but it comes down to two things, right? It comes down to, one, you have to have a desire and a basic understanding of the human mind and ego and how we function, right? And then you have to have a willingness to look at that. Well, if that's true across the board for humans, I'm a human, where am I doing that, right? And you have to start questioning our own behaviors in it, because if we don't like something in it, any good therapist will tell you, right? If you keep getting married, if you've been married 8 times and you keep getting older, but your wives they're all 21 when you marry them, the problem's not them. The problem is you. You are the common denominator, right? That's the case in any situation. Is that so? It comes down to, you have to have an awareness that if you want something more and what you're doing is not working, you have to seek out other methods, right?
That the whole bigger than yourself thing is an interesting conversation because I grew up, I was studying religions from Judaism and Buddhism and Native American way and atheism, paganism. I studied a lot of religions growing up. It's just one of the things I was fascinated by. And, in the Jewish faith, you're very questioning of everything, right? You question and question and question. I have an entire book of rabbis having a conversation about what the possibilities could mean about the Torah's translation, right? So it's like, well, what does this mean? I don't know, maybe it means this, and this. But it could mean this, it's like, it's very questioning of a religion in general. And so I always felt like I was questioning. I had a big issue with the word God for a long time. Maybe because we had to put a dash through the O and dash instead of the O, I don't know. The word seemed to diminish the existence of, right? And that was my belief. It was like, this 3-letter word can't represent, and there's Adonai is 2 letters in Hebrew, which is God. It's like, there's so many possibilities. And what I got was, there was a billboard that had a picture and it said, to those of you who are atheists, believing there is no design, plan, or God is like 7 trillion waves hitting the shore, and all of a sudden a sandcastle appears, because we are trillions of atoms that have just smacked together, and here we are. But without a planner, how would, like, That's just not possible without the planner. I thought that was a pretty good, argument against atheism. In my life, the argument against is I've gone through so much shit in life that, what if there isn't a plan, then there's no point in going through the shit. So I might as well just go. Right. And so that was my way of staying on the planet, is having that belief. But if somebody were to look at what you're saying as far as self-dominion and then higher power, they kind of seem to contradict each other. How do they fit together?
Because at the focal point of self-dominion and looking to God, or the dollar, or your job, or your relationship, or whatever else it is that's driving your life, that's making your decisions for you, right? Because if you're the one navigating it, then you're limited on what you know, right? You don't know everything. You don't know how this was supposed to be. You don't know what's going on in a person's life. You can be best friends and talking to the person every single day. You still don't know what's going on for them in their life, because you're not them. It's impossible to. You can know a lot. You can think you know a lot, but you don't know how they feel. They might share with you, but you still are not them. The same is true for ourselves. That means that we are confined to our limiting beliefs, right? We're then, how do we know it's the best decision? Well, it worked last time. Awesome, trial and error. But have you done it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way? Or what about, have you done this, or have you done this, right? Things, you're limited to the decisions that you make, right? And your success is only going to be dictated by your level of knowledge, which is great, why we still want to continue to read, right? But at that point in time when I decided to stop looking at myself for the answers, because I'm in dominion of that place, right? But I turn it and I look it to God, what I call God. Others call it the universe, call it spirit. I don't care what you call it something. Look for something outside of yourself. At that moment, when I choose to look at this rather than the world, I'm in dominion.
Thank you so much for being on. I know you're a busy man. I think we did an episode. It's about 4 or 5 months out from being published. That's how popular this guy is. I mean, I'm just so jealous. I just want to be him, minus, of course, the bald head. But check out Superpower Experts. It is a great show. They have multiple shows actually within that network, and so you can find anything that may be of interest to you within that network. So I look forward to hearing what you guys got from this episode. Ask any questions. We'd love to engage. And thank you so much. This has been Ari Gronich with another episode of Create a New Tomorrow, where we're helping to activate your vision for a better world today. Thank you so much.